Good evening. So I wrote an article last week about this Texas flood and it got some traction. I'll put the link in the description. Um, I'm glad I didn't make a YouTube right away. So I wrote the article. Surprisingly enough, everything I said, I've heard other people say since. But I want to talk about this Texas flood and climate change and politics. Three, really fun things to talk about. First of all, kind of out of order, the politics. It's this flood was not Donald Trump's fault. It wasn't Governor Abbott's fault. It wasn't the county uh, executive, this Judge Kelly's fault. It certainly wasn't the fault of the people who owned the Camp Mystic. The man died trying to save some of those kids. So let's just kind of stay away from it was someone's fault. And I just want to talk about some of these red herrings I've heard crop up. It was FEMA's fault. No, it wasn't FEMA's fault. Could FEMA do a better job? You kind of hear that after every disaster. Could FEMA do a better job? And they probably can't do a better a better job. Like it's easy to criticize an emergency responder after the fact, right? So was Noah responsible? No, Noah wasn't responsible. Noah did a great job. These weather people knew they had a problem on their hand, put extra staff in the office, and made the calls at the appropriate time. And you go read those calls, and like they withstand the test of time. So no, it wasn't Noah's fault. Oh, um, Kerr County got $10 million of emergency funds in the American Recovery Act, and I mean, that was like in the Obama early administration. Like we just got to cut this. We just got to cut this out. It wasn't the Republicans' fault. And if we had a Democratic president and a Democratic governor of Texas and a Democratic local um, county executive, you know what? We would have the same problem. So if we are going to make any progress on keeping our people safe, which I think everybody should think or agree is a worthwhile thing to think about, we got to stop calling each other's names. No one's stupid because they don't believe in this climate thesis. No one's uneducated. There are plenty of very smart, very well-educated people who don't subscribe yet to this climate change thesis. And so the way to ask people to think about this again and look at the information and challenge them isn't to impugn their motivation or their intelligence because we're just never going to get anywhere. We're just going to be keep yelling at each other. And so I do want to then, if you see something, say something. So we're seeing something, and I don't think it's unfair for me to say something. Um, so yeah. So why do I think that this flood was a product of climate change? One, the exterior circumstance, the exterior world in which this event happened is one that has been clearly influenced by climate change. So I did a YouTube about this in 2003, a couple years ago. I could do it all over again. The results are going to be the exact same. And I stepped through, here's how to go download the data of all the years of the temperature, and here's how to go to Excel, and here's how to calculate the probability that what we're seeing is a bell curve. Where on the bell curve are we? Are we at 75% likely climate change? Are we at 95%, two standard deviations, 99%, three standard deviations. Like, where are we? Well, we're at one in a trillion. So there's a one in a trillion or greater, it's actually greater, probability that what we're seeing is natural variation. Well, that's the math department, they call that almost surely zero. Okay. So it's not zero, it's one in a trillion. Like if you had a trillion years, well, like we lived a trillion different worlds, like one of them would, this would be natural variation. But in reality, we live in the real world, and the climate's changed already. It's already changed. I don't want to talk about models or Al Gore. Like it's a complete wasted conversation. I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to share the whole screen. So forgive me. I don't even know what's on it. Okay. Hard to share. This is the article I wrote. And so I told you I went through all the data for the globe. Made the YouTube just tell you the number. It's one in a trillion. So let's go look at Texas. Well, maybe climate hasn't changed in Texas. No, the climate's changed in Texas. So here are these climate stripes. Here's the temperature record for Austin, Texas. And what I'm saying is the probability that all those red hot years in a row, hot, 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 more hot, more hot, more hot, more hot. The chance of that happening being kind of on a bell curve and that is like it's less than one in a trillion. So if you disagree with me, and I'm happy to have people push back, like go download the data. There's a bunch of different data sources. Use whatever data you want. Take out take out information you don't like in the data. There was someone who did that actually. His name was Dr. Mueller, is a Berkeley, UC Berkeley physics professor, good guy. And he said, "Hey, all you climate guys, I don't believe your data." And okay, you don't believe the data. So he got some money and he made his own data set. It's available on Berkeley Earth and still lives every month. It gets updated. And they took out a bunch of data and they put different probabilities on data. But guess what? He came to the same conclusion. Well, I cleaned up the data and I came to the same outcome. The globe is getting a lot warmer. So then let's just kind of stay in the math department because I don't really love leaving the math department. We don't have to leave the math department anymore. Like I don't need to talk about climate models or Al Gore. Like it's not helpful. Let's just go look at this river data. So there's a river gauge, and it's not far from where this Camp Mystic is on this Guadalupe River. And here's the data from October 1st, 1990 to July 7th, 2005. You can't see the big spike on the end. I'll go over that here in a second. Be my next thing to show you. And what do you see? I didn't even go put this in. I did download the actual numbers, so I could do this if I wanted to take a day and, play with the numbers. But I don't need to. Like, why should we? So we have an average, let's call that the mean of about 8 feet. We have spikes over the 35-year data set. And let's just kind of guess. I'm just going to pretend the daily standard deviation of this data is about a foot. So it means 8, the standard deviation is 1. It's kind of an easy number to deal with, that's why I picked it. But we could go kill ourselves and find the exact number. It's probably less than 1, actually, which would have a knock-on impact what I'm going to say. But just because I just didn't want to do this and I just want to keep this simple, you see that there's a bunch of kind of 2, 4 standard deviation days. So in other words, there's a bunch over 35 years of 1 in 1,000 days. And what that says is every 3 years or so, you're going to have a flood of 10 feet or 12 feet. The gauge is going to go to 12, and that's a flood. And things are going to get wet. You're not going to kill everybody. And so one of the things the county executive said, this Judge Kelly, that he never imagined that this could happen like this. And I'm going to defend the guy. Like, I don't think he could imagine that. In fact, he's human, and therefore I don't think he could. I don't think a human, a Republican, a Democrat, a guy in Texas or in New York City, like this is beyond our comprehension what we're seeing. So we've got to like we, we got to believe each other. And when he says this is way worse than 1987, which was the last kind of deadly flood around here, and I just lied, and I'll fill you in on that in a second. I actually 100% believe it's completely correct. This was way in excess of what they've ever seen, even the big events they saw in the past. And so, what did they see on the night of this flood, the night of July 4th? What I'm going to show you. They broke the gauge. They didn't see 12 feet. They didn't see 14 feet. They blew through major flood. They blew through flood. They blew through major flood. They blew through, the gauge broke at 37 or 38 feet. They could have seen 40 feet. We don't know. The gauge broke. How many standard deviations from 8 is that with the standard it's more than 20 standard deviations away. Like this is not in the realm of something that someone could expect. It's more than a 1 in a trillion day, because these are daily numbers, event. So so why do I think that climate change had something to do with it? Well, because it was way bigger, way more severe, way more impactful, way more deadly, way more everything you can possibly imagine than anything that we've seen before, including the 1987 flood. This data that I showed you doesn't pick up 87. That's on a different. You actually have to go to river flow cubic feet, and this meter wasn't in place then, so I just didn't. I didn't do it. I did go. And so what other kind of fingerprints of climate change existed during this event? So like, was it just these numbers? I would say, well, the numbers are pretty important, right? So when you go look at something and say, hey, as a globe, we have this 1 in a trillion probability that we're seeing natural variation. So like it's like zero. So we're seeing climate change. The climate's already changed. We go look at Texas. No, the climate's already changed in Texas. We go to this river gauge and say, oh, no, we're seeing the same thing in this event. The numbers are very consistent, what we're seeing globally, what we're seeing locally, and what we saw with these river numbers. Like all these things are indicative of a changed climate, right? It's either the temperature records, here's the river flow data. The other kind of fingerprints of climate change that are on this particular incident are one, the Gulf of America, sea surface anomalies, like we're 4 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than normal. And so I actually went back and looked at 1987. I looked at the 1936 or whatever flood, and sure enough, the sea surface temperatures were pretty normal. I went and looked at the daily kind of meteorological data for those events too, and it was a different meteorological mechanism. It looked like hot Gulf tropical weather hitting a very well-defined cold front. Two things coming together and created those other events. That's not what happened here at all. We had the hot Gulf, we had the hot weather, and then the weather system just went over Texas and stalled. It stayed for a very long time. And that also is a very well-known symptom of climate change. So you're kind of missing the upper atmosphere flow to get this area, this wet weather flushed out to the east or the northeast or whatever you think, then wherever it would go, it just sits there. That's happened time and time again. There's articles about this symptom of climate change. Kind of other thing, the area was in drought, so 100% drought. So again, symptom of climate change. The weather in June, very, very hot. Much, it was one of those red bars. So the weather was very hot. The air temperature in June over Texas, as all the people live there know, is very hot. Um, and the surface, I mean, this area is conducive to flooding because if you the soil's clay, and if you take clay and you bake it, as any um, you know, kindergartner knows, you take clay and you bake it, it like turns into pottery, right? So and so the water hit the ground and it didn't drain into the dirt, right? It just flew into these rivers, kind of so so obviously the soil surface has been the surface soil has been clay all along, but the climate change piece was we're in 100% drought, so the clay was completely baked. Another point that I think is important, I really don't see people talk about, the exact same thing happened. 13 people died 2 weeks before in a very similar event less than 100 miles away. So what are kind of the classic symptoms, indicators of climate change? More frequent, in this case, two in a month. More severe, 13 people, a couple hundred people dead. Now, we're going to take a complete turn down a different alley and just talk about the math. So, I'd encourage anybody that has, way too much time on their hands, to, where is it? I don't see it, but go to YouTube and I'll do it live. What the hell? Very dangerous to do this, but I'm gonna go show you my YouTube feed. Those are my own videos. We're not interested in that. We want to talk about chaos. We want to talk about, we want to get out of this. We want to go to YouTube. YouTube, okay. I want to talk about chaos and nonlinear dynamics and go say, oh, well, I want to go learn about chaos and nonlinear dynamics. I have all sorts of spare time on my hands. It's a wonderful book on this subject by this Stephen Strogatz. And sure enough, his class is right there on YouTube. Feel free to buy the book and take the class. It's right there. Let me just summarize the whole thing for you. One, the weather is a non-linear dynamic system, right? It doesn't change in a straight line. And that's non-linear and it's dynamic. It just does change, right? And so if you just look at the number, like this guy wasn't talking about climate change, he was just talking about uh you know the mathematics behind chaos theory and what happens when you have this uh, nonlinear dynamics. And the punchline is, and I'll stop sharing so I can is you have something that goes round and round the drain and you change the initial condition just a little bit, round and round and round, all of a sudden, boom, it flips. It completely booms on you. And that's what we're seeing here. And that's why Republicans, Democrats, people in California, people in Texas have trouble understanding that, yes, the fire can be way worse than even thought it was going to be. The flood, yeah, like I really shouldn't expect the flood here, this particular place of more than 14 feet. Certainly no more than 25 feet. Like that would be it's crazy. No, it really can break the gauge at 35 feet. So we're seeing because we've changed the initial condition of the climate, we're seeing these big results. So just kind of want to like rewind what I said. So, and kind of what I propose is if you don't believe in climate change, please just go like this data. I got it online. So go get it and go tell me what you think what the mean is and what the standard deviation is and what the probability of seeing what we're seeing is. Just go tell me. I could have made mistakes. I'm not infallible. I mean, let me save you a bunch of time. I don't think I really made a lot of mistakes here, and I didn't even crunch the numbers on this river data because it's just obvious by looking at the graphs, right? So uh, we're seeing a globe whose climate has changed. It's already changed. We're seeing Texas, whose climate's already changed. We're seeing the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, whose sea surface anomalies are not what they used to be. We're seeing a different world. And when you have a different initial condition, we're going to have to go back and I'm going to make a kind of a thought experiment. Well, what happened if we did a fifth national um, climate assessment? We've done four of them already. I read the fourth one in the context of this event, and generally I believe in what it said, but I mean, it was really hard to believe if you weren't like a completely woke person. Like we got to cut this out. It was 1,800 pages of wokeness. So if we say to ourselves, well, geez, why aren't these Republicans who really don't want to talk in that vernacular, not loving the story? It's because we're telling the wrong story. We should stick with the facts and the numbers. And we don't need to do much more than that, right? And we should identify who's at risk. Well, we would have identified uh, this Texas hill country is at risk. And we should have identified at the county level, we have to go say, we have to fess up. The climate's changed. I don't want to talk about what you've experienced. I want to talk about 12 feet. I want to talk about 35 feet. People say, well, you're crazy. How could you possibly? Because that's what we're seeing. Well, we would have identified this Camp Mystic, and we would identify these high risk people, and we could have had in place a plan. The weather, the NOAA people did a fine job. They have NOAA radios that you don't even need your cell phone to work. The NOAA radio goes beeps and makes all sorts of noise. And this Camp Mystic, for example, had a night security crew. Like the local emergency response could have been aware that this level of disaster could have. Of course, they were not aware of this. They're not lying when they say we didn't think this could happen. Like, no, they didn't think it could happen. And it doesn't matter that the Republicans, the Democrats didn't think it could happen either. Like, so it's not, I'm not being critical. In fact, I mean, there were heroes who gave their lives here. So obviously they didn't think they were putting their own life until happened on the line just by being there, and they certainly didn't think they were putting the lives of the people in their care at risk. I mean, let's be real clear about that. Not the county, not the state, not the camp owners, and so, uh, but certainly, if we reimagined our world where you could have had 35 feet, and there would have been police cars streaming down these roads, say, "Hey, get the hell out!" with the sirens on. And that's the kind of response we need to have. The other thing is with regard to kind of like the political ideologies, we just live in this world where one side is ideologically driven, the other side is ideologically driven, and we just got to like understand that that doesn't mean the people are bad people, going either way, or they don't care about uh, America, because they both do. Um, but at some point, we just got to say, hey, listen, here's the data. Like, is my data wrong? Like, I'm happy to look at your numbers. But if the numbers are right, it seems like there's NOAA weather forecasting stuff like has some value. It's like we need to keep that. And if we get rid of it, people are gonna keep dying. So it's important what this National Weather Service does. The other thing that's important, if we kept spending some money on the climate research and we kept collecting the data and we kept analyzing the data and we took AI and brought it in to help us analyze the data, we wouldn't have an hour or two heads up. We would have 5 hours, and then we would have 10 hours. Like if we threw some money at this, we would have a better product to help us. And so I think, without really talking about the broad implications of climate change and public policy, I mean, that's something really for another day. People aren't going to take seriously. People are going to continue to put in place worst case in the context of their human experience. But the climate's changed. So I think we have to go to people and say, the climate's actually changed. And we know you have a 100-year floodplain, and we know you negotiated where the floodplain was going to be with FEMA. And I'm not going to like that's history. But don't you know, when the weather guy says emergency flood, that means you could be at 35 feet. So like when that happens, you got to like have the buses already running. So my article I wrote is in the description here. And just to summarize, we don't need to talk about predictive models anymore. I think we should continue to go do predictive models and make them better and better. So we, again, can, have better and better tools to help manage this problem. So we're not calling people at 1 in the morning and saying, like you got to leave in 10 minutes. But uh, we can't be calling each other names. And I think it's kind of interesting to hear all this stuff that I've heard about NOAA, about about FEMA, um, about should they have put sirens? I actually don't think they need sirens at all. They need to go buy a bunch of $15 NOAA weather radios and keep them on when there's flood watches. It's my own. It's a pretty good product actually. But what the main issue isn't sirens or no sirens or what people did with the Recovery Act funds. They bought communications for the police department. Um, you know, none of that really matters. We need to educate people that, hey, the climate's changed, and that doesn't mean you can't drive your Ford pickup. I've got a Chevy pickup right out right in the driveway. Like, but it means that you need to be aware that the river can go to 35 feet, and you probably think I'm crazy for saying that. But that's the conversation that should have happened, and those are the procedures we need to put in place. And as we look at infrastructure going forward, we need to envision the infrastructure to support not just the 100-year experience, which is kind of what happens now, but no, like what are the real possible outlier events? And no one wants to talk about it. It's like it costs extra money, but we're not going to get out of this. Like the climate's changed just a little bit, and you've seen what's happened. Well, we're going to be sitting here 5 years, going to have changed a bit more. So, my hope is we stick to the facts, we quit calling each other names, and we come up with a future that envisions worse than worst case. We're talking about emergency response. I do think there's other broader kind of energy policy stuff to talk about, but we'll talk about that on another video. We need to at least realize what we're seeing. See something, say something. I saw something, I said something. And I hope people take in context what I've said. So I'm not, I think I could say similar things about the California fires and everybody's a Democrat out there. So like this is not about politics. This is about reimagining what we need to do. In California's case, they need to go give Cal Fire a bunch more money and go got to go like that's a big problem and it's another problem. Um, the biggest states for climate risk are Florida, Texas, and California. So it's an equal opportunity problem. Thank you for listening, and I'm certainly available for people to get back to me with their own numbers that are different, but you know, they're not going to be that. The outcome's still going to be the same. Thanks.